Okay, so welcome everyone. Welcome to this international webinar on regenerative tourism as a new dimension for ecological sustainability and long-term business competitiveness. We have a series of speakers today, beginning with Marcos Vaina, a senior executive at IFC, who will carry out a quick poll to engage you and better understand your understanding of regenerative tourism. This will be followed by a presentation by Virginia Fernandez-Trapa from the World Tourism Organization, providing a global perspective on the regenerative pathway of the Glasgow Declaration of UN Tourism and UNEP. Next, we will have Tanisha Brown-Williams from the Inter-American Development Bank. She's a senior tourism specialist and will be speaking about transforming tourism, embracing regenerative tourism for a sustainable future. We will then follow with Mr. Oliver Hillel, who is a senior expert in biodiversity mainstreaming. He'll be speaking about biodiversity restoration opportunities and challenges with regenerative tourism in sustainable destinations. Our next speaker will be Hélène van Hossem from the UN Decade for Ecosystems Restoration. She'll be providing an overview of the big picture and partnerships for scaling up ecosystem restoration through the UN Decade. That will be followed by a presentation by Andre Fortunato from CIPA, or the Customized Educational Programs Abroad organization. He'll be presenting on regenerative tourism as a business model in international education. This will be followed by a presentation by Gabriel Mesez of Incatera. He'll be presenting a presentation on Canatur and regenerative tourism as a business model and destinations. The closing remarks will be provided by me, and I will comment on regenerative tourism practice and final remarks. We'll also aim to ask the speakers some questions throughout, and we're looking forward to learning with you today about this important topic. So now I'd like to pass the microphone to Marcos from the IFC so that he may poll us and start to stimulate some thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Frederick. Let me start by thanking Green Initiative and my fellow panelists for their availability, the invitation, and the availability. It's a pleasure and honor to be here, sharing some thoughts with you. I thought, about the polling situation. I think we'll get straight to business, and maybe we can do a Q&A later. But just before we poll, I'd like to frame the conversation a little bit. So my name is Marcos Vaina. I'm a senior strategy officer at the IFC, the International Finance Corporation, which is the private sector arm of the World Bank Group. I'm joined also by other fellow international financial institutions. Here I see Tanisha from IDB. So we have a couple of colleagues here on a similar space. So I think, my idea is to discuss a little bit about the synergies between the type of work that we do as a development finance institution. Green finance is part of the work that we do. And we have what we call the IFC Environmental and Social Performance Standards, which is, a set of guidelines that we use to evaluate any kind of project that comes to us for financing, right? So I'll talk a little bit about how that relates to the elements of competitiveness and regenerative tourism. Now, the caveat is I'm not a tourism expert. I think we have several tourism experts around the virtual table today. But I think I'll talk a little bit about more related to the issues of competitiveness and sustainability in the construct of regenerative tourism, right? And I think these topics are more interconnected than they might seem at first glance, right? And I think understanding their relationships can help us drive sustainable development forward. So let me talk a little bit about IFC's performance standards, environmental and social performance standards. And these are a set of 8 comprehensive guidelines designed to help businesses manage environmental and social risks effectively, okay? These standards are particularly important for projects in emerging markets and are used as benchmarks by investors and development finance institutions to ensure sustainability and social responsibility. So I'm going to briefly introduce these 8 standards and discuss where they align with the principles of regenerative tourism and how they contribute to competitiveness. So the first category is assessment and management of environmental and social risks and impacts. The standard lays the foundation for integrating environmental and social considerations into project management. In the context of regenerative tourism, it ensures that tourism projects actively mitigate their impacts on local ecosystems and communities. The second set of guidelines are labor and working conditions. By promoting fair labor policies and safe working environments, the standard aligns with the principles of regenerative tourism, which prioritizes the well-being of workers and the broader community. The third point is resource efficiency and pollution prevention. And the standard focuses on minimizing resource use and reducing pollution, which is essential for maintaining the ecological integrity of tourism destinations. Efficient resource use also enhances the competitiveness by reducing operational costs. The fourth point is community health, safety, and security. And protecting community well-being is at the heart of both the standard and regenerative tourism. Projects that ensure community health and safety are better positioned to gain local support, enhancing their social license to operate. The fifth is land acquisition and involuntary resettlement. This standard aims to prevent negative impacts from land acquisition and resettlement. In regenerative tourism, respecting land rights and providing fair compensation fosters positive community relations, which can translate into long-term competitiveness. The sixth point is biodiversity conservation and sustainable management of living natural resources. And I think we'll hear more about that in some of the case studies that we'll be covering today. So regenerative tourism and this standard share a common goal, right? Preserving and enhancing biodiversity. Projects that protect ecosystems not only meet regulatory requirements, but also attract, important class of eco-conscious tourists, right? And of course, there's a greater value in restoring ecosystems for the benefit of society as a whole. The seventh point is indigenous people, where we look at the respect of the rights and cultures of indigenous people, which is crucial, both for complying with our IFC standards and when we talk about regenerative tourism as well. Projects that engage with indigenous communities and respect their heritage gain valuable insights and enhance their cultural authenticity, boosting competitiveness. And finally, the eighth and final one is cultural heritage. Protecting cultural heritage sites is a priority for both the IFC standards and regenerative tourism. Preserving cultural heritage adds value to tourism experiences and differentiates destinations in a competitive market. So all of this, I know it's a lot of information to digest. We will be sharing some web links where you can find that information. Is publicly available, and there's more details for those that want to learn a bit more. But why am I starting the conversation with those standards? This is to illustrate, and this is IFC's environmental and social standards, but like IFC, I'm sure IDB and other financial institutions increasingly have, very well-defined and a complex set of guidelines that we follow for compliance when we look at financing tourism destinations. I think in today's world, we see let's say, the downside of over tourism in many destinations. I mean, I think we all have read stories about what the negative impact of over tourism has done in many destinations across the world. And I think there's a real opportunity here for new destinations, and especially in the spaces that I work in emerging and frontier markets in particular. I do a lot of work in Africa, for example. I think the fact that these destinations are still relatively untouched present a huge value opportunity for the tourism sector to be developed in not only a sustainable way, but really looking beyond sustainability and making sure that the inflow of tourists and tourism projects do not adversely impact the natural assets that these countries possess, right? It's a very competitive market. So it's really, I think, going above and beyond the traditional kind of sustainable tourism concepts is a must today for those destinations that want to differentiate themselves in the marketplace. But more importantly, I think for the long-term sustainability of the business, right? And we, as IFC, invest in many links of the tourism value chain. We invest in the transportation sector, in airports and ports. We invest in tourism operators, in real estate developers. So I can say we have a good overview of the sector. It's a sector that we are actively present in, but I think there's still quite a large gap when we talk to our clients or potential clients to understand that it takes more than set up, a green hotel to create a tourism destination and to make sure that the benefits flow back to the communities and to the country. So I think the framework of the environmental and social standards that we use, I think it's a good blueprint for those who are interested in developing the sector in a long-term, sustainable, and competitive manner, right? I think it's really important to understand how these different pieces fit together. The environmental and social standards that I just illustrated, how that is necessary to access green financing opportunities with IFC or other development finance institutions, and increasingly commercial banks that have green financing lines. And finally, the element of long-term competitiveness, which is another side of the same coin, right? So I'm really keen, in conclusion here, to hear from the other colleagues how they see that those two sides of the coin, competitiveness on one side and regenerative tourism on the other, because for me they go hand in hand as part of an interesting proposition for long-term growth of tourism destinations and operators. So I hope all the audience are keen to embrace these synergies to drive long-term value for businesses, communities, and the environment. I'll stop here and I hand over to, I think, Virginia as the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marcos. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation to the colleagues in Green Initiative. It's really nice for us to engage in discussions on regenerative tourism. We have actually been doing so more regularly in the past months, and it's very useful to actually capture the different views of stakeholders about this relatively new approach or trend or term in our sector. I'm trying to be a bit provocative here. I'm program coordinator on sustainable tourism and resilience at UN Tourism. And again, thank you for the invitation. As you all know, regenerative tourism is really gaining a lot of traction. And I guess it's easy to understand why, right? I mean, it's inspiring. It's very encouraging to envision a world where tourism is not merely sustainable, but it is regenerative. Tourism is actually acting as a force that can heal and revitalize our planet and its communities. It's inspiring. And that leads to many saying the time has come for sustainable tourism. It has to evolve into regenerative tourism. We need to move beyond merely sustaining what we have into focusing on regenerating what we have lost. But is this the right way to proceed? I mean, are we supposed to be replacing one with another? I leave it there. I mean, I guess we should not forget, and Marcos alluded to this, that all our work is anchored on sustainable development. Sustainable development aims to create balance across its three pillars: economic, environmental, and social, and it aims to create a system where human activities are aligned with the long-term health and stability of both society and the planet. And this also applies to sustainable tourism. So in our opinion, it's all about balance. You would have noted that the title of my presentation is related to the regenerative pathway of the Glasgow Declaration. For those of you who may not be familiar yet with this declaration, is a declaration on climate action in tourism. It's actually a voluntary commitment. It's an action framework that we launched at UN Climate Change COP26 in Glasgow in November 2021 as a tool, as a vehicle to accelerate climate action across the tourism sector. And this action framework, the Glasgow Declaration, is calling on all tourism stakeholders, whether it is a policymaker, a business, or a civil society stakeholder, to align, to develop and align climate action plans with science, with national climate goals, and so as to support limiting global warming. So it's basically a tool for our sector to come on board the fight against climate change and play a role, be a part of the solution. As I said, the declaration is asking stakeholders to develop climate action plans, trying to provide a consistent framework to avoid fragmentation, to lead to multiplier effects and better aggregated impacts. And it requests that those climate plans align with 5 pathways: measure, decarbonize, regenerate, collaborate, and finance. So the idea is to guide the sector in reducing its carbon footprint, supporting ecosystem regeneration, and building resilience. And of course, the regenerate pathway is central to the Glasgow Declaration, is one of the pathways. And yes, it is a concept that challenges us to go beyond conventional practices, and which also places the Glasgow Declaration at the nexus of climate and biodiversity loss crisis. So how the Glasgow Declaration is framing its regenerate pathway, and I quote from the declaration, is restoring and protecting ecosystems, supporting nature's ability to draw down carbon, as well as safeguarding biodiversity, food security, and water supply. And it continues, as much of tourism is based in regions most immediately vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, ensure the sector can support affected and at-risk communities in resilience building, adaptation, and disaster response. And then it ends with help visitors and host communities experience better balance with nature. So there is an environmental angle, ecology, and there is a people's angle, resilience to regeneration. Whether this working definition is complete or not is something that we wish to work on in a participatory manner. And again, that's why all these engagements and discussions are very useful. This is so far the guiding working definition of regenerate adjuvant tourism. There's no other official document speaking of regenerative tourism. And yeah, it's trendy, it's inspiring, but we, colleagues, we do need to make sure it's solid, right? We don't want it to be like a marketing thingy. So, I mean, I guess we all agree that most important thing is that we need to shift gears. We are certainly exceeding planetary limits from too many angles. And in my opinion, respecting the foundational principles of sustainable tourism is fundamental. Challenging a fundamental concept, both for policy and practice in our sector, which has actually taken decades to mainstream, does not seem to be in our advantage. So this does not stop us, of course, from recognizing that the urgency of our times and all the alarming signs that we see every day demands a shift in our strategies. But we should be cautious, I guess, when implying that the concept of sustainable tourism should be abandoned. Like, have we, I mean, those with that school of thought, carefully thought or evaluated the consequences that this could have? I'm not sure. So at present, and in alignment with the Glasgow Declaration pathways, for us it's clear that regenerative approaches can certainly play a role in accelerating the pace of change towards the needed balance, so that we can ultimately ensure sustainable development of our societies. And we need to integrate those regenerative approaches into the very, fabric of our tourism policies and actions. Regenerative is a call to accelerate our efforts, taking bold and innovative steps that align with the global climate and biodiversity agendas. I mean, regenerative approaches are multidimensional. We said it before, and environmentally, we can talk about restoring ecosystems through initiatives like reforestation, marine conservation, the protection of biodiversity. These efforts not only enhance the natural environment, but also contribute to climate adaptation. They increase the resilience of ecosystems to climate change, and in turn, the resilience of those communities around them. And by strengthening these natural systems, regenerative tourism helps buffer against the effects of climate change, ensuring that the communities are better equipped to adapt to the new realities. Socially, it involves empowering local communities, preserving heritage, and ensuring that tourism benefits are equitably shared. And these social dimensions are also crucial for climate adaptation, I would say, as they promote the inclusion of local knowledge and practices, imagining those climate risks. Communities that are empowered and involved in regenerative tourism approaches are, I guess, more likely to engage in adaptive strategies that protect their cultural and natural heritage against the impacts of climate. And last one, economically, and there I link again to Marcos with his reflection on competitiveness. Regenerative approaches foster resilience, and they do create diversified and sustainable income streams for local populations. And once again, this economic diversification is key for climate adaptation, reduces vulnerability to climate shocks, and also supports local businesses, promoting local value chains, and ultimately reducing economic leakages from tourism destinations, which directly connects to more competitiveness and more GDP growth through tourism. So I guess I will stop here. It was just reflections that I wanted to share as food for thought, and I look forward to the interactive part of the webinar. Thank you. Over to you, Fred.
Okay, thank you, Virginia. I'd now like to move on to Tanisha on transforming tourism.
Good morning, everyone. I do have a PowerPoint. So permit me to just stay off of camera for connectivity, and do apologize for my voice. I'm just battling a flu. So I'm delighted to be with you this morning to share some thoughts on the topic transforming tourism, embracing regenerative tourism for a sustainable future. Thank you for the organizers for inviting me to join the discussion on a matter that is so very relevant for the current and future development of tourism. I'll start by sharing two examples, the work of which has been supported by the Inter-American Development Bank. Next slide. So let's talk about Walker's Reserve located in Barbados. So in the heart of St. Andrew, Barbados, Walker's Reserve stands really as a beacon of transformation. It's a ecotourism destination that is managed by the Walker's Institute for Regenerative Research and Design. And this was a former quarry called Walker Sand Quarry, which once supplied silica sand for numerous construction projects across the island of Barbados. However, the owner envisioned a new purpose, a space where nature and community could thrive together, and thus Walker's Reserve was born, turning the former quarry into a flourishing nature reserve and an eco-agro-tourism hub in Barbados. So through regenerative agricultural practices and permaculture design, the barren land, which you can see the two photos in the middle, the barren land has been revitalized with native trees and restored habitats, creating a haven for local wildlife. Visitors can also enjoy the guided nature walk that highlights the area's beauty and the ongoing conservation efforts. And there's also apiculture or beekeeping on site. And visitors also enjoy learning about beekeeping through information sessions and direct interaction with the bees. Education is really central to the reserve's mission. As I said, there are tours, there are workshops to raise awareness about conservation and sustainable living, and involving local schools, community groups, really in hands-on conservation activities. So Walker's Reserve also integrates Barbadian culture into its programs, partnering with local artisans, farmers, educators, and the like. And visitors engage with local craft, food, and traditions, truly deepening their connection to the land and the people of Barbados. So it's a model, in my estimation, of regenerative tourism, and Walker's Reserve really illustrates how committed efforts can turn transformed landscapes into thriving ecosystems that benefit both nature and communities, and really showcasing the power of environmental stewardship and cultural engagement. Next slide. Let's journey to Brazil, where IDB's Produtor Salvador program is transforming tourism in Salvador. This initiative really aimed to boost income and employment in tourism while ensuring that Afro-Brazilian communities gain a larger share of the benefits. The program had four components, primarily Afro-Biz, which supported Afro entrepreneurs with a marketplace and business assistance, Afro Estima, which provided training and mentorship, Ole Afro, which promoted Afro-tourism experiences and products, and Festival Salvador Capital Afro, which drove marketing and public relations. So in 2023, there was a pivotal workshop which was organized by the Ministry of Tourism, the Ministry of Racial Equality, and the Brazilian Tourism Promotion Board and the IDB, which laid the foundation for nationwide policies that support these goals. And this workshop also led to the creation of the Black Roots Working Group, which further embeds Afro-Brazilian perspectives into tourism policy. So Produteur Salvador is truly a living example of regenerative tourism in action. And by focusing on preserving Afro-Brazilian cultural heritage, economically empowering local communities, and promoting sustainable practices, really, this program demonstrates how tourism can be a force for restorative and inclusive change. And I use those two examples, one from the tourism supply perspective and one from a policy, tourism policy perspective, to demonstrate regenerative tourism in action. Next slide. Now, while I could share numerous examples that illustrate the principles of regenerative tourism, it's crucial to acknowledge that many current tourism practices fall short of these ideals. We've all seen the images and we've heard the criticisms highlighting the adverse impacts of traditional tourism development. As Marco said, over-tourism is something that, of course, we're grappling with. And so the other thing, though, is that the debate around regenerative tourism is ongoing. Virginia sort of alluded to this. So some of the critics are pointing to, for example, the absence of clear metrics and rigorous monitoring as major obstacles. They're arguing that scaling regenerative practices can be challenging, especially in high traffic destinations where implementation may seem impractical or cost prohibitive. Additionally, finding the balance between maybe delivering a memorable travel experience and adhering to responsible restorative practices remains contentious. Now, I want to bring us all to one common point of agreement. We can all agree that in spite of the debates around sustainable tourism, around regenerative, whether it's just a replacement, what's the difference, etc., I think we could agree that given the climate crisis and other pressing vulnerabilities, the global tourism industry must embrace a new approach. So it is imperative for all stakeholders within the tourism value chain to adopt what is called a transformative mindset. And this shift really involves moving beyond purely economic objectives to embrace, next slide, sorry, to embrace the holistic reflections, which I have highlighted on this slide. So basically, some rhetorical questions really to ponder, is tourism a net benefit to the people at the destination or to the tourists? I pulled this question directly from a prominent Caribbean economist who is saying, in the absence of data, are we sure that the people of the Caribbean, and I am from the Caribbean, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm based in Barbados with the IDB. So what is really the net benefit to the people of the Caribbean, and do we have the data to support this? And so what I'm essentially saying is that a shift really involves reflection on these key issues and maybe these three questions that I'm proposing. So next slide. Tourism researcher Diane Dredge aptly captures the essence of this challenge in her article, quite an interesting article actually, on regenerative tourism, transforming mindsets, systems, and practices. She emphasizes that evolving our thinking, both in tourism and addressing broader global challenges, requires a fundamental shift in our perspective. It's about expanding our understanding and problem-solving approaches and moving from a focus on me to we. And I think we know this, but do we really know it? So true progress lies in cultivating compassion, empathy, and collaboration within our social ecological consciousness. And this is some of the work that Diane Dredge and others are doing with regards to how do we move towards this transformative mindset that would, of course, further or progress regenerative tourism. So how do we foster or continue to foster this new mindset? Dredge is of the view that we must tackle this mindset change from an individual level, and I want to concur. So in order for us to really affect the tourism system, so some ways we can do that, which we are already familiar with, is to let the data speak for itself. I want to propose that a mind cannot be transformed without visible proof of change and tangible evidence of its impact. So the IDB's tourism sector framework has a line action which deals with a regional knowledge agenda for the tourism sector that covers important issues for which there's a lack of information. We also need to continue to inspire by sharing examples. And if time had permitted, I would have shared many other examples, such as the recently concluded Compete Caribbean Community-Based Tourism Cluster Initiative, which strengthened community-based tourism enterprises in Belize, the Bahamas, and Dominica with elements of regenerative tourism at its core. Regenerative tourism also requires robust partnerships and community empowerment. If you go to the Walker's website, you would see up to 30 international, regional, and local partners listed. The owner with a brilliant vision could not achieve it without the assistance of international agencies like the IDP, civil society, private sector, and the like. So if we're talking about embracing regenerative tourism, we have to consider promoting more robust collaboration and partnership, and we must wholeheartedly embrace community members as leaders or co-leaders in the process. And my last point focuses on innovation and adaptation through research, which is really to come up with new methods or to refine new methods of achieving the goals of regenerative tourism. Next slide. We can be encouraged that this mindset is already loading somewhat. I pulled some recent headlines that exemplify this. The last headline is particularly encouraging, where the tiny island of Anguilla in Caribbean made a very bold stand in 2022 not to aggressively pursue the development of cruise tourism. As you know, that the Caribbean sees the most business in terms of cruises, but Anguilla's Minister of Tourism cited many issues related to the environment and the lack of trickle-down benefits to the people of Anguilla as main reasons why they have adopted this policy position. Now, he wasn't saying that cruise tourism is bad, and neither am I, but what he is alluding to is that in its present form, it didn't fit into the development approach being used for Anguilla's tourism sector. So ladies and gentlemen, next slide, please. I propose that the future of regenerative tourism hinges on our collective recognition that it is a mindset shift. One, brought to life through strategic policies and programs, and fully realized through robust partnerships across the entire tourism value chain. It is in this unified understanding and collaborative effort that we will shape a truly regenerative future for the global tourism industry. And with that, I conclude and thank you for your attention.
Fred, I think your audio is off.
My apologies.
Yeah, nice work.
Anisha, thank you. I'm really glad to hear your views on what's needed. particularly transformative change, as our next speaker will likely touch upon these issues as well. I saw a hand up, but I don't see it anymore. So we'll move on to, oh, hand is back up. Is it possible to unmute Anthea Matus? If not, maybe we could figure out a way for the question to be communicated in text, and I can address some questions later on in the webinar, closer to the end.
Andrea, should it be possible to open her microphone now?
Okay. Anthea, would you like to try?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. Hello, everybody. I'm absolutely thrilled to be part of this today, and thank you for the invitation by the Green Initiative. I'm Anthea Rousseau, and I'm the founder of Dreamcatcher South Africa, nonprofit. I'm absolutely thrilled by Tanisha and yourselves so far. Dreamcatcher started when I was still studying at university. The only way, because we are faced not only with environmental degeneration, but also a political system which completely excluded locals, the apartheid system. So that became my life's mission. And everything that you are saying here, Tanisha, everything that the prior speaker said, is those principles we all put together. But what we added to this is I had no model. So starting Dreamcatcher South Africa, the only model I had by 2000, because you must understand, coming out of an apartheid system, you are not allowed to actually bring tourism to the townships. So I actually embraced the principles of the 2000 Millennium Goals. And I used them as my guiding light to actually establish Dreamcatcher South Africa. So everything that Tanisha is touching on here, it is, you can build the most important, wonderful strategies and plans and policies, but you need the people to make it work. Those that were the worst affected by the exclusion and the lack of benefits and the degradation of the environment around them. So I used the UN goals from the 2000 to implement it across. And now we have this cluster of women that we call Inkloweni Kamamas. I'm very, very blessed that I can speak Xhosa, which is the language of Nelson Mandela. And I promised him 30 years ago when I met him for the first time in my life, I would do something about this. So now after 30 years, I find myself in the company of you incredible people. And this is an alone no more job. But what we have done besides everything is we have underpinned everything we've done with research. We've done impact studies before, baseline, in between, and in the end. So what are those benefits? How are we measuring it? And so that is the way in which the community stays with us. And we're working across South Africa. And I've been now contacted by other African countries who find themselves in very difficult positions. So I just want to say, without taking any more of your time, brilliant, brilliant. And I'm alone no more with all the women. We focused on the women because they're the hand that rocks the cradle in the community, and they will take the youth along with them. So I'm very blessed that I've been invited to speak at the global conference in South Africa on waste and environmental impact on waste and communities. Now, we all know the impact on waste and the environment, which is prolific across the world, and it's no better in South Africa. So the model which I did, looking at the UN goals from 2000 to 2015, everything, was I actually helped to close waste burning directly in the communities. So the destination itself had to be completely redeveloped. It was desecrated. So with so many of you there, with all the knowledge that you have, I'm so happy that I cannot tell you I'm going to jump over the moon today. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you very much.
You can check
We'd
on
be,
us.
yeah,
can check on us.
we'll be happy to be in touch. Thanks a lot for sharing your experience.
Yeah.
It's very valuable. We'll now move on to Oliver Hillel, who is a senior expert in biodiversity mainstreaming, and he will talk about restoration opportunities and challenges in sustainable destinations. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Fred. I hope you can hear me. The slides I have here are more like a commentary on the excellent speeches you will hear and that you have heard regarding my experience, not only in the Convention on Biological Diversity, but particularly working with the tourism sector. So basically, if we can see my first slide, and thanks, Eve, for trying and helping me out here. That's right, the beautiful logos. I think, you know, coming on Virginia's provocation, I think regenerative tourism has one big advantage in that it is an empowering narrative for the sector in a situation, if you can change for the next one, please, in a situation in which since the concept of ecotourism, which Tanisha already referred to, we've had more excuses from the sector than ways ahead. I remember when, you know, people like Jeff Lipman shared that the major airlines would call him a tree hugger, and his Green Globe certification process was certainly a pioneer in everything. I remember discussing with the same UN tourism that we hear you, Virginia, leading so well with so many others, saying that no, tourism's footsteps is maybe 2 or 3%. It's nothing really significant. I remember working with Conservation International, trying to measure the footsteps of the hotel industry and biodiversity, and being told we have no footsteps. In fact, we have no relation with biodiversity because mostly we are between Europe and the Northern America, so we don't really go to mega diverse places. And all those arguments nowadays, thankfully, also to the leadership of all the institutions on the concept of regenerative tourism, this is changing, right? We need to go beyond carbon neutral, carbon positive. The reality, and this is what I'll try to prove here, now the narrative of tourism is that we can actually help, we can become positive. And for the first time, I posit this is possible because we have decentralized the collection of information that allows us to monitor not only the carbon footprint, but also how do we involve people. I'll show a little example in a few minutes how you know, simple devices can change the whole game of how do we talk about regenerative tourism nowadays. And in fact, as this definition is an ongoing concept, as ecotourism has been too, I posit that the only way to do it is to always call for best practices like Green Initiative is doing right now, then establish those as guidelines, minimal guidelines, that you then incentivize, that you then promote, and finally, as governments, you can then establish them as minimum operations for licensing or for permitting or for concessions. So there is a sliding scale in the mitigation hierarchy of regenerative tourism, and we need to drive it forward, particularly because nowadays everyone knows the risk, the concept of risk is so well understood by the actuarial sector that this is no news for everyone. The next slide, please. In this one, I want to share with you a little bit the experience that I've had all over, and it is built on Paul Rogers' brilliant concept of planet happiness and the application of the happiness, the gross happiness index that has been used in Bhutan all over the world. I was part of an experience of an organization called the World Center for Excellence in Destinations, applying that concept here where I am close by in the Abitibi-Témiscamingue region, which is called a resource region. I'll explain to you why. But the basic point is that people could relate to a questionnaire about happiness along certain items like community, environment, life quality, well-being, life-work balance, the kind of tourism that they have. And therefore, they became engaged in a welcoming initiative for the region, led by the tourism agency. But it was not only about tourism agency. Tanisha, just like with you, the idea there in Abitibi-Témiscamingue is mining and extractive. So the main city has a pollution problem with heavy metals because guess what? They have a metal foundry and they have some of the biggest gold mines in the world around them in Quebec. So how to become, you know, how to avoid this this paradox of being, we are an ecotourism destination, but at the same time we have a heavy cadmium pollution problem in the lake in our main welcoming hub. So they dealt with that by doing this, by becoming a destination and saying, we have a problem, but we also have solutions. We are a resource region, we are a territory, integrated destination, and we want you to come see how we're dealing with the problems of protecting nature as a tourism asset, but also offering agriculture, mining, and other uses of land that need to be integrated. For instance, hunting and outfitting the indigenous communities in Quebec. They sell hunting and fishing trips. So this needs to be put into the picture as well. So, you know, the idea that a destination is more than just tourism, and that the welcoming and happiness index can become a transformative factor, in fact, has been already seen at COP15 in Montreal, when the tourism sector opened the Business and Biodiversity Forum and said, you know, this is about welcoming a productive region, such as a resource region. And I think we have many in today's presentation. The last slide I want to share with you is just with a few provocations on how exactly we can use regenerative tourism as a concept. So first, this idea of the globalization of all SDGs anymore. It's not just about climate. It's not just about development and people. It's about health. It's about hunger. It's about partnerships. It's about all 17 SDGs, right? In that case, I also want to call attention to a very, maybe not as valued as before, subnational governments, regional governments, such as Abitibi-Témiscamingue, or such as, you know, the metropolitan authorities or biosphere reserves, which are the level of government that deals with ecosystems, right? They have a very, very important role, and I propose that one of the big things we could look for in the next large meetings of the multilateral environmental agreements, including biodiversity and climate, in Cali, Colombia now, biodiversity, and next year in Belém, in Brazil, on climate. Let us see decentralized cooperation between regions, states, and provinces, talking about this territorial approach that turns tourism not just as one sector, but potentially a transformative sector. And maybe the last provocation I want to say is, I think all over the world, there's too many labels, too many ways to do it. So very often the way is to go regional. When I was becoming a tourism professional, the Organization of American States was possibly the leading institution in Latin America and Caribbean generating knowledge on sustainable tourism. I challenge all of them, including ACLAC, including regional chapters of the World Travel and Tourism Council, and all of you here today. How can we coordinate all those lessons at a regional level so that we optimize the best practices, produce guidelines, and raise the level of minimum competence in environmental sustainability. Thank you so much for your attention, and my email is there for those who want to continue this discussion.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Always a stimulating conversation. Very happy to have you with us today. Just so we can keep to time, I'm going to move right on to Hélène at the UN Decade. Please proceed, Hélène.
Thanks a lot, Frederick. Very happy to be here. I'm going to wait for a sec so that the slides are put up. Thank you. So I'm a program management officer at UNEP. UNEP and FAO are the co-leads of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. So I'm going to be talking about the kind of global picture on restoration with a focus on partnerships. Next slide, please. So on the onset, I want to kind of give some background on the UN Decade, right? So it was proclaimed in 2019 by a UN General Assembly resolution. The goal of the UN Decade is to prevent, halt, and reverse the degradation of ecosystem worldwide. And UNEP and FAO were invited to lead the implementation of the decade. But I mean, why did member states declare the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration in 2019? So it was based on a flurry of scientific reports and more alarming evidence on the state of our planet. The IPCC, which is the climate change science policy body, and the IPBES, which is the biodiversity science policy body, both released landmark reports finding that we have only 10 years to avoid catastrophic climate change and biodiversity loss. So action in this decade, that's 2021 to 2030, is crucial, fundamental to fight those two crises jointly. Next slide, please. Just to talk about the UN Decade's vision. So the UN Decade was officially launched in 2021, but the year before there was a lot of consultations that took place on the strategy of the UN Decade. How can it achieve its goal? What should it be do, right? And this resulted in the vision of the UN Decade and its mission, essentially 10 years to restore the planet. And also focusing on enhancing the implementation of existing frameworks, not replacing them. So that's the Sustainable Development Goals that we all know, but also the Climate Change Convention, the Biodiversity Convention, and the Desertification Convention, which together are the three Rio Conventions. Next slide, please. So what is in that strategy exactly? What did we find that we could do, and how can we accelerate action in this decade? So there was mostly 3 pathways for change that were identified. The first one, building a global movement for ecosystem restoration that comes through advocacy and communications, through an online digital hub, through educating initiatives. The second pathway is generating political will, working with policymakers as champion, generating legislation and policy change, such as the landmark EU restoration law that was adopted a few months ago after many discussions. And the last pathway is developing technical capacity, so helping practitioners, to giving them the tools and the funds they need to actually implement ecosystem restoration, and including, indigenous people, local communities, all stakeholder groups in that endeavor. Next slide, please. So how is the UN Decade structure and practice? So we know that UNEP and FAO are the leads, but we also have a 3 kind of type of bodies that are either implementing the activities of the decade or, shaping the strategy and the direction. The first one is the advisory board. It's a board that gathers over 30 global experts in ecosystem restoration, very high-profile people, CEOs, civil society leaders from all around the globe. They meet once or twice a year to give direction to the UN Decade. We have a partners network of over 280 organizations. We think it's the largest partners network in the world on ecosystem restoration. And it goes from international NGOs that have been talking about ecosystem restoration on decades to very small actors or implementers, and connecting all of those partners together in a network. And finally, we have 5 task forces, which are really at the heart of the implementation of the UN Decade. They are doing a lot of knowledge production, heavy lifting, different initiatives to shape the decade. It's the task force on best practices, task force on monitoring, task force on finance, task force on science, and task force on youth. Next slide, please. And one of the key things that the UN Decade has put forward, and that was also echoing what some of the previous speakers were saying about regenerative tourism. What should it look like? How do we assure that it actually provides benefits and it's not just a marketing tool? The UN Decade at the beginning was asking itself a similar question: what does good ecosystem restoration look like, right? I mean, we've been doing tree planting for centuries, and a lot of those projects have not been successful, or there's been trade-offs between different components of sustainable development, ecosystem protection versus livelihood versus finding fuel for cooking and things like that. So one of the important things we did at the beginning was to write out principles for what good ecosystem restoration would look like, so that there is a common internationally agreed approach of like, what is ecosystem restoration actually? And so this principle is just a small booklet with 10 principles. And if a project follows all of this, then we can ensure that ecosystem restoration maximize benefits for the implementation of the conventions and the SDGs. Next slide, please. And following the principles, last year was released the standards of practice of the UN Decade. So that's a longer read, about 80-page document, but it's a lot of recommendations to apply the 10 principles in a very concrete manner all around the project cycle, right? So from planning and design, implementation, management, M&E, assessment, etc. And it's applicable to all types of ecosystems, because we are quite keen on showing that ecosystem restoration is not just land or tree planting, but it goes to freshwater and marine and coastal and the whole diversity of ecosystems. Next slide, please. So one of the big things the UN Decade is probably our higher profile initiative is the World Restoration Flagships. So the premise of the UN Decade, it was the idea that we don't need more commitments on ecosystems restoration, right? It was found that countries have already promised 1 billion of hectares in ecosystem restoration, which is an area larger than China. So we don't need more, commitments to act. We need to act on those commitments. And the idea was to find in practice where this restoration is happening at large scale and to showcase it, to give it a higher profile. So with the World Restoration Flagships, we created this kind of award, it's the Oscars of the ecosystem restoration movement. And it's honoring the best example of large scale and long-term ecosystem restoration that are also aligned with the 10 principles of the decade. So we've launched 10 of the first flagships in 2022 at CBD COP15. And then early this year in February at the UN Environmental Assembly, we launched 7 more flagships. We had a gala and an award ceremony. You can see the picture in the thing below. Next slide, please. So the flagships are really instrumental to the decade. I mean, they're supported by, comms and advocacy support. They also are eligible to receive financial support. We have a documentary series where you can go and check them out. But I wanted to point out to the link that some of them have with tourism. So some of them are operating in areas that are super important for tourism. For example, the Mediterranean forest. We have a flagship there that works to regenerate this forest, make them more resilient to wildfire, and ensure they can, still be used for tourism in the years and decades to come. And other flagships, for example, the Terra Arc landscape. You see the tiger picture. It's in Nepal on the foothills of the Himalayas. One of the way they aim to generate economic returns with restoration is for ecotourism. And that's also the case of our marine restoration flagships in Abu Dhabi, where some of their business model is to use restoration to generate ecotourism and bring economic returns to the communities. Also to mention a big link we have with the tourism industry is that TripAdvisor is a partner of the UN Decade. They actually invest a lot in restoration projects, and they also give the opportunity to their advertisers to invest in restoration projects. Next slide, please. The UN Decade wouldn't be what it is without its brand and its logo. So for advocacy and communications, we've opted for a networked approach, connecting global partners and local implementers. having a logo that can be used by anyone, any partner can use it, they can change the logo, they can custom-made it, which really made the brand, it can be appropriated by all and really strengthened its ownership. We've reached not only millions, but hundreds of millions through our documentary series, through our launch campaigns, and for different knowledge products. In terms of messaging, ecosystem restoration is positive, right? With so many of the bad news we hear in the environmental field, it's actually kind of a positive messaging that we can reverse some of the damage that we've done. And we're not only piling up bad news, but we can also celebrate some of the good news. Next slide, please. An interesting piece that we've produced for the UN Decade is the framework for ecosystem restoration monitoring. It's a website. I invite all of you to go and check it out. It's aiming to track global progress on ecosystem restoration worldwide. It has also a search engine when you can look for best practices. So I haven't actually looked if there's anything on tourism in there, but there could be. And you can also visualize, geospatially where the initiatives are located. So it's a super useful framework, and it's going to help countries as well to report on their commitments under the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Next slide, please. You can skip this one. And go to the next. And also to the next. So I'm running a bit out of time. Thank you. And so that's my final slide. But, at the UN Decade, we're always happy to make more connections, more collaboration. So there's many opportunities for you to engage with us. Hopefully those slides will be shared so that you can look at them in a bit more depth. But our partner network is ever growing, so you can become a partner of the UN Decade. We have an action plan that organizes our partners around different challenges, and we aim to update it next year. So maybe we should, add a challenge about regenerative tourism. Our UN World Restoration flagships are visible, and they're also always looking to make connections to help deepen their work and implement. We will be launching our digital hub very soon, connecting all of the restoration initiatives in the world. We have our monthly newsletter. We host learning sessions. We're going to have the next one in next month. So yeah, please engage with us, reach out, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Hélène. You managed to keep it on time, and much appreciated. Hopefully you'll get some new partners out of this event. Now I'd like to move on to André Fortunado from SIPA, so he could discuss the topic of regenerative tourism in international education. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm first going to present the SIPA and SIPA Foundation, and then later on I'll explain and share with you how do we practice regenerative tourism through our service learning programs and our climate positive plans. Next one, please. So SIPA stands for Customized Educational Programs Abroad. We are a family-run tour operator located in southern Germany in a very small village. And we've been in the tourism business for about 20 years, but we are relatively small with about 25 employees. We focus on study abroad programs for North and South American universities, and we operate all around Europe, France, Italy, Germany, even outside of Europe, sometimes with incoming agencies in Morocco and in Turkey. And basically our role is to arrange the classrooms, accommodation, academy visits, all cultural activities and meals, and everything that university needs in order to provide the students the best educational program possible. Next one, please. And also, I'm going to talk a bit about the SIPA Foundation, which is also linked to SIPA, which is SIPA Foundation is based in the USA. It's a non-profit organization under the Section 501c3 under the US Internal Revenue Code. And its main goal is to enrich SIPA's education abroad programming and to expose the students to different perspectives and cultures, but also to give back to the world through our academic webinars, scholarships. We also organize international symposiums at the European Study Center in Strasbourg, and we have cooperation with other nonprofit organizations, as I'm going to share later, through our service learnings in Guatemala and Costa Rica, and our climate positive plan together with Green Initiative. Next, please. So for our service learning, we operate in 2 different locations. It's Costa Rica, in Osa Peninsula, and then in Guatemala. In Costa Rica, we act together with Semana Foundation, and we aim to protect the biodiversity of the area, not only the people, but also the plants and the animals around it, and to improve the sustainability practice in that area. And we with our programs, we raise the awareness on the students' environment, not only in their families, but also in all the environment around them, through our lectures and engaging with the locals. And also the students participate in activities that serve the local necessities, which is planting trees, the seed collection, and very importantly, the data collection, so that everyone knows what is out there and what needs to be done. And in one example is Columbus State University, which has traveled with us, and their participation not only improve the sustainability of the place, but also the ecotourism in the location, and consequently improving the economical state of the area. Another example I would like to share with you would be one with Fancoli, which is the foundation of the Free Hearts. And this happens in the Mayan village of Huerta Grande in Guatemala, where we found that 70% of the children suffer from malnutrition, and at the time, 1/3 of the children was prospective to remain illiterate. And we wanted to change that, and also the conditions of the poor families and their low quality of life. So started cooperating with them, and of course with the goal of improving the family's quality of life. And through that, we brought in universities to educate their children. We provided with donations to build schools and to build infrastructures that would help the children and the families to improve their quality of life, and making sure that the community in the future can be self-sustainable. And since 2022, we have regularly 2 universities that are participating in our programs, where they engage with the community, and they teach English in the mornings during their programs, and in the afternoons they build stoves, which they happily donated to the Mayan village, and they build it as well. Next one, please. So now I'm just going to share a little testimony from the West Virginia University, if possible to. Yes, perfect.
Sorry, but I'm not hearing the sound there.
Me neither. Could be possible. Maybe.
We're on a bit of a tight schedule.
Okay, then we can move on. I
Okay.
can shortly say what was discussed in this video. So basically, the students that were part of one of the programs in Guatemala, they share what they are doing, and share that they are going to take this learning environment back home. That they went to a new world of their own, which they were not aware that actually existed, but they learned a lot. And I think this is the base of our commitment towards these programs, is to share and to do more. It's to share with the students, is to make them also aware of everything that is around them, and to make this world a bit better. Next one, please. Now, the point I would like to share with you is our climate positive plan, which is together with the Green Initiative and the Semina Foundation. This also takes place in the Osa Peninsula, in a small area. And our main goal here is to reinforce and empower the habitats of trees, birds, insects, vascular plants, and monkeys. And we do this by every student that travels with us. Since 2019, we planted 1 tree. And this has proven to have a significant impact on local communities, for example, generating jobs, providing stable incomes to the families, and overall an economic growth and a better environmental conservation. Also, we try to cut down on the greenhouses gas emissions, and through this, again, share awareness through our students and educate them in our nature positive actions. Next, please. The few photos of the students in the climate action plan. As you can see, they're with the community. They're in the they're planting the trees. So it's good to see that they're doing these things. Next one. Now there's just some numbers. We during COVID, we contacted over 300 universities, where we decided to plant one tree for university during that time. And since then, we have now exclusive reports that are shared with these 77 universities, and these 77 universities can visit the places and still work on the conditions that they are in, and all the environments around it. And overall, we've planted so far over 7,000 native trees. We have cut down on 3,000 tons of CO2. And for our 2030 target, we have 20,000 trees, which is very, very achievable. And as of now, we are certified as climate neutral, but we are heading in a very strongly direction towards a climate positive certification, which is honestly our main aim. And we are certified by Forest Friends as a Forest Friends accelerator, which not only we do our part, but we share with the people what they can do for towards regenerative tourism. Next one, please. So just in conclusion, what I wanted to show to you is how we are contributing at SIPA for regenerative tourism. We not only aim for having a more eco-friendly business model, but also to share this model and to share this awareness with our customers. And as you can see, without moving too many things, too many stones, we are improving the lives of people in the communities we operate, the lives of the animals, the plants, and the trees of the Osa Peninsula, and more importantly, we are trying and we are making the world a better place. Thank you. If you have any questions, just feel free.
Thank you very much, Andre. We'll now move on to our next speaker, Gabriel from Inglaterra.
Thank you, Frederick. Thank you to Green Initiative for allowing us to be part of this webinar. I also have a presentation. Good morning to everyone. I am project manager at Inglaterra. I hope this case, this story can encourage and inspire other initiatives on regenerative tourism. Next slide, please. Inglaterra is a pioneer of ecotourism and sustainable development in Peru since its establishment in 1975 and has won awards such as the 2020 Global Vision Award by Travel and Leisure, and is an alliance member of Relea Chetoa and Virtuoso. What we are looking at is Inglaterra Reserva Amazónica in the Madre de Dios Amazon rainforest. It is established in what was the first conservation concession in Peru dedicated to ecotourism. Next, please. It is also climate positive, the first climate positive hotel brand certified by Green Initiative. According to Green Initiative, our carbon footprint brings we offer an environmental benefit due to the conservation work we do in our areas of influence. Next slide, please. These are areas of influence: the Amazon rainforest of Madre de Dios, the Machu Picchu Cloud Forest, Sacred Valley of the Incas, the city of Cusco, and now we are working in the Cabo Blanco Tropical Sea, Desert, and Dry Forest, where we are working on marine life restoration and working closely with the artisanal fishing community that was declared Cultural Patrimonio of Peru in 2018 by an initiative that was led by Incaterra. In the Amazon rainforest, we are also working on a conservation corridor, the Madre Dios Sustainable Landscape Corridor, with the Smithsonian. We're partnering with the Smithsonian Institution and USAID. We are restoring an area of 80,000 hectares and trying to mitigate the impact of illegal mining and logging, and also empowering communities in sustainable business models to create a hub for green business in the area to restore genetic connectivity. This is our approach. As a basis, we produce scientific research, which leads to our conservation strategies, to raising awareness among travelers and local communities, and also to provide well-being to the communities where we are established. So this leads us to sustainable development. Incaterra Asociación is our non-profit organization established in 2001. We work with around 200 fellow researchers, and the Incaterra Asociación's initiatives are the main source of inspiration for the travel experiences that Incaterra provides in its properties. Next, please. One of the main strategies we work on is flora and fauna inventories to determine the baselines in our areas of influence, and also to measure our own impact. It proves to be a high biodiversity areas with such as 362 ant species, which was a world record sponsored by Professor Eduardo Wilson. We have also described many new species to science, 29, including many orchids. Next, please. We work with the communities closely. We have trained around over 4,000 professionals in many career opportunities. Our managers in the Amazon, for instance, they were first explorer guides. They brought local knowledge to our vision, and now they work with in managing positions in the Amazon. Next, please. We are going to present a case study in the Machu Picchu cloud forest. Next, please. Where we have restored biodiversity. This property, it's about 10 hectares, and it was a very degraded area. It was originally used as for sowing, as a tea plantation, and also to raise cattle. And we managed to restore it since 1976. We restored it restored the cloud forest by planting native flora, which brought back the cycle of life to the numbers we're going to see now. Next, please. We have 306 bird species registered by Cornell Labs of Ornithology's eBird app, including the Andean cockatoo rock and the golden-headed quetzal and 18 hummingbird species. And we also have native orchids. It's 372 species. 28 of them are described as new to science, and American Orchid Society determined it was the world's largest collection in its habitat. This is the latest orchid species we described. It was dedicated to Werner Herzog, who made two important films in Machu Picchu and the Amazon, Aguirre and Fitzcarraldo. Next, please. And this is a certification, the renewal of the certification of Machu Picchu as the first carbon neutral wonder of the world, which is an initiative that Incaterra has been leading with with Green Initiative and through a public-private alliance. And it started, next slide please. This was the goal. The goal is to achieve zero net emissions by 2050, following the Paris Agreement. And we have managed to get very encouraging results. Green Initiative has determined that there was an 80% decrease of total emissions from 2019 to 2024. And that is also a demonstration of the commitment to the environment that this public and private alliance has towards Machu Picchu. Next, please. These are our partners, Incaterra, AG Group, the municipality of Machu Picchu, which CERNAM, the National Park Service, Tetra Pak, Luz del Sur, World Exchange, and Bosques Amazónicos. And through this, I'm going to present how we achieve circular economy through a waste management strategy, and proves Machu Picchu to be a global sustainability model. Next, please. Next, please. We can go. This is the background. This was 2015 when Machu Picchu is an sort of an island. It's an isolated destination. You can only access by train or by foot. And the amount of waste that was being accumulated in Machu Picchu town, it was almost 14 or to 28 tons of waste being accumulated daily, and it was very hard to process it and to get it out of the city. So UNESCO was about to warn Machu Picchu that it was about to enter the Patrimony at Risk list. So we managed to, with this public and private alliance, we managed to bring a good solution, a very efficient solution with a low investment that started with a plastic compacting machine that processes 8 tons of plastic waste on a daily basis. And it brought also awareness to the community of the importance of recycling. Next, please. We also process cooking oil, used cooking oil that was being spilled at the river, and it was heavily polluting the Vilcanota River. We managed to process it to get biodiesel and glycerin that free of chemicals that is used to clean the streets in Machu Picchu. Next, please. This is the most innovative solution. With organic waste, we are producing biochar through pyrolysis, and the biochar as soil amendment is used for reforestation of native flora in Machu Picchu. Glass processing is also the newest, the most recent strategy. It's managed to process about 2 to 3 tons of glass waste since its establishment in 2021. And now we are working on this project to restore the cycle of life in Machu Picchu through reforestation. It is what we did in the property, in the 5 hectares of restoring the cycle of life and bringing back bird species, butterflies, and the whole habitat is being restored now in a bigger scale. Now we are replicating and scaling up the model we applied in the 10 hectares of Machu Picchu. And now we are doing this strategy as an initiative to outreach our projects. We have worked in 2 exhibitions, international exhibitions. This one Machu Picchu and the Golden Empires of Peru was presented in Paris, in Milan, and now it is going to Sydney. And now we also worked on Singapore with Gardens by the Bay, presenting orchid flowers preserved in resin from Machu Picchu, which was also a great way to encourage regenerative tourism in Singapore and the areas where the exhibitions are presented. So in a way, it's a way also to definitely encourage the vision of regenerative tourism, to prove that it's the scope is really broad, it's cross-cutting, and it's very influential with a very positive impact to the environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. We're now around time, so I'm going to move on to my closing presentation. If you could please load that up, Eve. So in light of the conversation that we've had on regenerative tourism this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, we'd like to showcase a bit of our own approach to this, which is our Forest Friends program. Yep, next. So our Forest Friends program is a certification scheme that connects enterprises with verifiable and socially inclusive ecosystem restoration projects, primarily in Latin America at the moment, but with the potential to go global. Next slide, please. This is an example of some of the initiatives that we've been involved in recent years. We're focusing primarily on the Glasgow Declaration, as you might guess, as well as contributing to the UN Decade. We're also looking into matters around biodiversity credits and nature-based financial disclosures as a part of a regenerative approach, trying to get a full perspective on how companies are operating and what the impacts might be and how they might be able to compensate or make a positive contribution to nature. Next slide, please. To give a bit of an overview of our activities, with SIPA and other partners, we have planted trees for 79 different organizations in 36 different countries or states. And as you'll see, many of these are educational organizations. So the examples that were provided by Andre from SIPA are very relevant to this particular project or scheme that we have running. Next slide, please. As you can see, the seal is granted to organizations that essentially meet the UN Decade's international principles based on our standards for reporting. We've crafted our approach to be tailored to the private sector context, and while still being linked to international initiatives and standards for best practices. Next slide, please. To give a bit of an overview of where we are focusing our activities, we use the CPF hotspots study, which has identified 5 hotspots in South America. The first that you'll be familiar with is the work that we do in the Osa Peninsula through Seminario Foundation. And we're also working in 2 areas of Peru, the Madre de Dios with Incatera and Chapari as well. As you can see, these are some of the world's most biodiversity-rich areas, and it is why we concentrate our efforts on conserving nature forests and biodiversity in these areas. Next slide, please. The Osa Peninsula itself is quite small, but has a tremendous amount of biodiversity, has 30% of the world's biodiversity that is endemic, 4,000 species of vascular plants, 10,000 insects. And as you'll see from the image on the right, these are some of our restoration projects, and they're aimed at improving habitat for these, for local species, including endangered species and endemic species. Madre de Dios, where Inca Terra is located, is similarly one of the world's most biodiversity-rich sites. I believe it has around 5% of the world's known biodiversity present in the area, and these are tropical and flooded forests. So they're very rich in aquatic biodiversity as well as terrestrial biodiversity. Next slide. These are some examples of our experiences so far. So we've already had a presentation on the SIPA Foundation. Sweet Tours is a Swedish tour operator in Costa Rica, focusing on Swedish tourism experiences. And they similarly are engaged in regenerative tourism through the Forest Friends program, Hulu Travel as well. Next slide, please. Based on our metrics and our monitoring systems, we're able to produce this kind of metric for our clients, so they get a very clear picture of what their actual contributions to ecosystem restoration are, including the potential carbon emissions that are reduced by ecosystem restoration. So this is both a form of action for nature, but also action on climate. Next slide, please. We are presently working on a white paper that we'll release shortly on regenerative tourism and the concept, so that we can share our perspectives a bit more broadly and focus on the kinds of opportunities that we've identified for tourism operators and others active in this area. Next slide, please. Okay, so that's the conclusion of my presentation. You can contact us directly if you'd like more information on the services we provide at contact@greeninitiative.eco. You can write me directly as well. I'd really like to thank you all for your participation. I'm sorry that we haven't gotten the chance to go much into a question and answer period, as we're now running about 15 minutes over time, and we don't want to take more of your time. So on that note, I'd like to thank all of our speakers and all of the participants for coming today. I welcome your communications if you're interested in collaborating in the future, and this certainly won't be the last kind of event that we hold on this, a very important topic. So thank you very much.